Welcome to the Planeswalker Project.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and my NB friends to the Planeswalker Project. Today, we will be looking at a commander who strikes me as one with a great deal of potential. Her strengths lie in the mechanics of Lifegain and the power that can be had with a surplus of life. Of course, we will be talking about Licia, Sanguine Tribune. So, unlike her fellow vampire Edgar, who would gladly unleash his army of vampires to rain hell upon our enemies, Licia finds victory in a much different route. Rather than just pure aggression, we will passively be draining our opponents, focusing on gaining life over time in great quantities. While engineering this build, I started to notice stark comparisons to another Lifegain commander, Aloro, albeit without the access to the control magic of blue. That being said, this deck is capable of gaining a lot of life very quickly. The goal of this deck is to gain life in large sums rather than building up a little bit here and there. Let's begin by taking a look at what exactly Licia does. She is an 8-mana 4/4 with first strike and lifelink, so this already puts her into a position as an aggressive attacker, as she will gain us a minimum of 4 life every turn. She also has a cost reduction clause, where for each 1 life we gain during this turn, she'll cost 1 generic mana less, similar to Carador. At her absolute cheapest, she will only cost us 1 each of red, white, and black mana. Now, if you lose life after gaining life during the turn that you choose to cast her, she will still have her cost reduced by that life that you had gained. Life loss will not change a reduction to her casting cost. So for example, if you gain 3 life by a card effect, but then take 2 damage later before you cast her, she will still only cost 3 mana less to cast. This can also help reduce her commander tax should she be returned to the command zone at any point. She also has an activated ability. By paying 5 life, we can put 3 +1/+1 counters on her. We're only able to activate this ability once per turn and only during our turns. This gives us added benefit to gaining the amount of life we will be aiming for, as we will get it back in kind as we strike with her more and more. Now for the supporting cast, shall we?
So the first section we're going to cover will be our aggressive life gaining cards. These are the creatures that we can go on the attack with in order to gain life. Starting off, we have the Archangel of Thune, who is by far one of the best cards in the deck. She offers a lot of value as a flying lifelink creature, but her biggest strength comes from her ability to give a +1/+1 counter to each creature we control whenever we gain life. Given how much life we plan on gaining, we're going to be making some pretty hefty creatures. Speaking of hefty creatures, Divinity of Pride is another flying lifelinker, but also comes with the benefit of gaining +4/+4 if we have 25 or more life. This can make it an 8/8 flying lifelink creature for only 5 mana, which in my book is some pretty powerful stuff. Next, we have the Eerie Lone Rider, who's a personal favorite of mine for this deck. It begins as an unassuming 1/1 with first strike and lifelink, but should we have gained 3 or more life in 1 turn, an easy feat for this deck, it transforms into a deadly 4/4 with first strike, lifelink, and trample. Who says the Eldrazi invasion of Innistrad was a bad thing? Of course, no lifelink deck would be complete without Serra Ascendant. This card is by far one of the most dangerous first turn plays of the format. It can be played for 1 mana, and as long as you have 30 or more life, it's a 6/6 with flying and lifelink. This will quickly become a target for removal spells, but it can give us a tremendous head on our life gain strategies before it leaves the field. It can help reduce Licia to a mere 3 mana cost with a single strike. How's that for value? We also have a few cards that help bolster our life total, sometimes by stealing it from our opponents. For example, the Blood Artist, whose ability triggers every time a creature dies, drains an opponent of 1 life, and we gain 1 life. Then there's Brutal Horde Chief, who causes the defendant player to lose 1 life for each creature that attacks, and then we gain that life. So with a couple of creatures attacking, that life can add up. The Nyx-Fleece Room is a nice bulky enchantment creature that gives us 1 life at the beginning of our upkeeps. The Scholar of Athreos can be a nice mana sink, taking 1 life point from each opponent for only 3 mana per usage. Our dear friends the Soul Sisters make an appearance here, gaining us life whenever a creature touches down. Suture Priest is also here and is a potential deterrent to opponents trying to go wide with creatures. Wall of Reverence is a great card to have with a pumped up Licia, giving us back a ton of life every turn. Authority of the Consuls also acts as a Soul Sister, with the upside of tapping down any new opponent creatures. Debt to the Deathless and Exsanguinate both can severely tip the scales in our favor, draining opponents of their life while funneling it all into our total. Now, we have some fun things we can do with our life gain. One of my personal favorite groups of cards are the Life Doublers. Rock's Faithmender and Boon Reflection double our life gain. Alhamerit's Archive also doubles our life gain, and it also lets us draw 2 cards for each extra card we draw outside of our draw step. We'll talk about card draw later, but this is a very powerful artifact to have on the board. Also, speaking of doubling our life gain, Beacon of Immortality doubles our life total, which is considered life gain for the purpose of any of these cards that will double it. So now that we've gained a ton of life, what do we do with all of it? Erebos, God of the Dead, not only prevents opponents from gaining life, but we can pay 2 mana and 2 life to draw a card. We can do this as many times as we can afford to, and given our likely high life total, we'll be able to spare some life. Then there's Aetherflux Reservoir, also known as the Death Star, which can deal 50 damage to a player at the price of 50 life. We can also gain life off of it, and if we manage to get enough life, we can easily take out everyone else at the table. Just be warned, if you cast this early game, opponents will likely target you, as this is a high priority threat. Tynma, the Weaver, lets us pay life to draw extra cards after combat, based on how many opponents were hit with combat damage. Well of Lost Dreams also offers us plentiful card draw based on how much life we gained. And while I personally feel an infinite combo using the 2 is rather cliche, Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond do fit in quite nicely here. You can use the 2 to drain the life of every player at the table and win. This infinite combo, while it can be called uncontrollable, does have a technical ending, which is when the last player left standing is you and your opponents are all, well, dead. I also recommend putting in True Conviction to give double strike and life gain all across our board. This will put our life total way out of reach to our opponents. Now for win conditions. This deck does have the capacity to win through combat damage and through draining opponents of their life, but we also have a few other tricks that we can win with without laying a finger on our opponents. Felidar Sovereign wins us the game as long as we have 40 or more life upon the beginning of our upkeep, something that's pretty easy to do in this deck. Test of Endurance does the same thing, but it requires 50 life. Again, it's a very easy win condition. Celestial Convergence gives the win to whomever has the highest life total when the final Omen counter is removed, which normally should be us, but does have a small chance of letting another player win should we somehow mess up our life game. Stormherd, Sorin, and Grim Nemesis all have the potential to dump tons of creatures into play, and by a ton, I mean equal to our life total. It's not uncommon to get several dozen creatures from one of these spells. Now that we've covered much of this deck's main strategy, I think it's time to talk defense. Being a life gain deck, this deck is going to be a high priority for a lot of our opponents. If one player's life total is skyrocketing out of control, it will be imperative to take that player out, and that player is going to be us. The easiest way to handle an opponent's threats is to simply kill their creatures off. My board wipe of choice is Fumigate. This board wipe also comes with the benefit of gaining us 1 life for each creature killed off, potentially buffing our total up even more. Merciless Eviction is another great choice, as it has flexibility to handle a number of different problems on the board. Vandablast is a nice way of clearing pesky mana rocks as well. We don't want any opponent interfering with our life gain, and one of the few ways this deck can lose is through commander damage, so we'll want to either keep the board state clear on our opponent's fields or have some defensive spells. There's Selfless Squire, who can wait in your hand until you're being swung at for lethal, or any amount that you deem necessary to block against. You flash her into play, and when she emerges, not only will she prevent all damage dealt to you this turn, but she'll get that many +1/+1 counters placed on her. This can be a huge turnaround card should you be about to be taken out, as she can attack on your turn, likely for a lot of damage all on her own, and opposing boards may be tapped out after a failed alpha swing. Crossface is another fun defensive card. While this is in play, only 2 creatures may attack you per combat. This can really hinder an opponent's ability to chip at your life total as it climbs even higher. Ghostly Prison or Norn's Annex are other good options as well, forcing opponents to pay to attack. These basic pillow fort cards might not really contribute to life gain nonsense we'll be going for, but they will be good to help us retain our life. And of course, a new white staple, Teferi's Protection, can simply have you cease to exist for a little while. With it, you and everything you control just phases out until your next turn. This card does come with the downside of halting any life gain shenanigans during your opponent's turns, but should you need a turn to get your win conditions off, this is perfect. Assembled Legions is in here as well, one of my favorite Boros cards of all time, as it will steadily grow you an army of hasty soldier tokens, perfect to have in play after a board wipe to start dishing out some damage. For this deck's mana base, we have a lot more white and black costs than red. In fact, we only run 3 cards with mandatory red costs. We will want to note that while we do not have a lot of red presence in the deck, we will want easy access to that color should we need it. I always start my multicolored land bases with the shock lands, which are prime targets for fetch lands as they have basic land types. In this build, we run Blood Crypt, Godless Shrine, and Sacred Foundry. For my pick of fetches, I run Arid Mesa, Bloodstained Mire, Marsh Flats for exclusively on-color fetching, as well as Polluted Delta for fetching a swamp. I choose for the 4th fetch to go for swamps only because as the second most needed color in this deck, I can make white mana easier than I can black, and so this gives me a little extra nudge of black mana. I also run a few of the filter lands, Rugged Prairie and Fetid Heath, as both give me access to white mana and the other 2 supporting colors. I do not run the red-black filter land. Being a life gain deck, I feel it's safe to run some pain lands such as Cave of Koilos, City of Brass, and Mana Confluence, as we can easily regain the 1 life lost from tapping these. Our lands also have a few utility abilities to help with the life gain strategy. Kabir Crossroads gains us 2 life on the land drop. Blighted Step can be traded in for 2 life per creature we control. Maze of Ith can chase off attacking creatures, Shambling Vent can become a 2/3 lifelink creature, and Vault of the Archangel offers Death Touch and lifelink to our creatures. Urberg is always a must-have for multicolor decks running black, as it can let every land in play tap for black mana. Cabal Coffers also loves Urberg being in play, as we can churn out more black mana than we'd ever need using the Coffers ability. And lastly, Sunhome Fortress of the Legion can be helpful should we want to give someone with lifelink double strike. Say, maybe our commander?
For the full deck list, which includes many of the cards not discussed here, you can check the link in the description of this video for our TappedOut deck list. Special thanks to EDHRec and TappedOut for their services in facilitating the research that went into building this deck. This video's graphics are also thanks to Scryfall for their incredible high-resolution images of cards discussed, and of course special thanks to Wizards and you, the Magic the Gathering community, for making this the best card game in the world for us to rock out with. I hope you enjoyed this look at Licia's Sanguine Tribune. What do you think of this deck? Are there suggestions you would offer to people interested in building this commander? Let's chat in that comment section down below. Remember to tap that like button if you enjoyed this video, it'll help others know that it's a good one. Remember to subscribe and ring that bell to be notified of every new video that we put up, and if you're interested in helping this channel grow to even greater heights, we have a Patreon that you can contribute to. Once again, I hope to see you all at the beginning of the next upkeep. Thanks for watching, Rockstars.